Greetings and welcome to another episode of Association Matters, the official PCAAE podcast for conversations on governance, leadership, and impact. When associations thrive, societies rise. So we are your hosts. I am Bobby.
And I'm Emily. And the topic for today's podcast is Leading Digital Transformation, how one association reimagined its technology for greater impact. In today's digital age, organizations must adapt or be left behind. But how do you successfully shift a traditional organization into a modern, tech-driven powerhouse or untangle a disconnected technology stack that's holding your association back? Today, we're diving into the topic of digital transformation for associations.
So, in this episode, we look behind the scenes of an inspiring journey of change, cultural shift, and survival. Join us as we discover how an association upgraded its core systems to drive deeper engagement, increase efficiency, and build lasting, future-ready community.
Our featured guest is Jessica DiPietro, who is an association professional with 18 years of experience helping not-for-profits and association organizations improve operations through strategic technology innovations. She specializes in software selection, business process analysis, data migration, and digital transformation by translating complex organizational challenges into practical user-centered solutions. Throughout her career, Jessica has led initiatives that have streamlined operations, reduced costs, and improved the user experience. Her goal is always the same: to simplify complexities to achieve meaningful, sustainable impact and empower organizations to spend less time on administrative work and more time on advancing their missions.
Hi, Jessica. Interesting and great work you're doing. Welcome to Association Matters. We're delighted to be with us. So let's start the conversation. Every digital transformation starts with a reason. What was happening in your organization that made you realize it was time to rethink your technology? And how did you decide where to begin? We'd love to hear your story.
Thank you. Yes. Well, at first, it started with some obvious pain points. The ones that you grumble about to your colleagues and the ones that they complain about to you. This integration is broken again, or I was assigned a new program, but I don't have time for that. Or I thought that the issue was fixed, but now the customer's emailing me again. And, sometimes people think of these as that's just the way it is kind of stuff. But from my point of view, those pain points weren't acceptable for our members or sustainable for staff. I want to talk a little bit about how you get here because it's crucial to the cultural transformation you need before you even get into the tech. Associations have a superpower that occasionally becomes our kryptonite. We hire incredibly resourceful people. Give an association professional some duct tape and a spreadsheet, and they'll somehow launch an international conference, right? The problem is because we're so good at fixing everything, nobody realizes that the systems underneath are broken. So, for example, say that you have an AMS platform that doesn't fit your needs. Staff creates an innovative workaround, and maybe they write an SOP or even a project plan, but more likely than not, it lives in their folder and most of their colleagues don't know or even care about it. All the manager knows is that they got their work done, and bravo, right? In every part of the company, their colleagues are doing that exact same thing. They're hitting their goals. Maybe they're even coordinating and developing tactics for how to communicate to make the workaround the primary method going forward. They're so on it that they get assigned more work until they're doing the jobs of 3 people. And this is not hypothetical. The Research Institute McKinsey says that a high performer delivers 800% more output than an average employee. Meanwhile, right, these talented people are drowning in their workload, leading to stress and burnout. And the cracks start to show for your members. And you could be fielding some complaints, but the work is getting done, so why change what's working? The answer is really that it's not. The efficient employees are masking an underlying issue of an inefficient tech ecosystem. Often, by the time the work has ballooned to something that is unsustainable, it's past the time to have approached the problem. You might have an IT person or a database administrator or some tech power users, but oftentimes companies, especially small companies, don't have someone dedicated to analyzing how all of these things fit together, both technically or strategically. And that's where we were. We have a small staff and we had 17 member-related SaaS technologies. You have your AMS, CMS, email marketing, submission management, survey tool, mobile app. I could go on. They were not integrating well for us, if at all. And we were constantly fixing bugs and doing regression testing that we simply didn't have the time for. On top of that, it was taking users 10 to 15 seconds just to log into the website. I don't even want to wait 15 seconds for my coffee to brew, let alone to log into a website. But here's what really got me thinking. I was manually updating our mailing list via spreadsheets, and that took me 20 minutes every week. 20 minutes doesn't sound like much until you realize it's one tiny task done by one employee. And I started wondering, well, what if everyone has 10 little 20-minute tasks per week? How many do they have per day, per quarter? I realized we had created a huge opportunity cost with these workarounds. Then there were our actual costs. With each new platform, each annual subscription, we added more to the tech budget. That was to the tune of $70,000 per year. Now, I'm a believer that the best time to have planted a tree was 30 years ago, and the second best time is now. If you identify this same problem in your organization, it's okay to put anything non-critical on pause and to reevaluate.
Definitely. So, I totally agree. We just came from a conference and we had many conversations about how the high performing teams or the lean teams take on so much work outside their systems, and that causes that additional workload. I guess did you start with the people then? So you identified one issue. Did you then go to the rest of the team and ask them what their additional 20-minute tasks were as part of that? Where to begin, I guess, out of so many systems?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we had worked with like contractors and stuff before. From my experience, I knew that I wanted this to be mostly in-house. And so where I started was by taking on leadership for this project, which I saw was a critical issue. But you're right, I didn't go into the team meeting saying, hey, we're redesigning everything, because nobody likes that person. Instead, I got involved one by one, slowly gaining momentum for the idea. I'd say, walk me through your day. What annoys you? I looked through the lens of each team member to understand, what would be compelling to them. And where I saw gaps, I allowed grace. I would say, this program better than anyone else. And I understand that you've been doing it this way, and you're the expert. I trust that you know what you're doing. Also, can we take a look at it together? Let's document the process from A to Z. What would make your pain points easier? And is there another way of looking at it? And I think you'll find more often than not, people will be open to a conversation when you approach it collaboratively. And that's all it was. Like conversations, we continued every month in one-on-one meetings until I had created this document with dozens of our workflows. And the pattern that I saw in that data confirmed my suspicion. We had a huge sunk cost in staff time. Now, if you're going to be proposing this large transition to your boss or to the board of directors, you need to have the evidence in order. And for some, it was the data that I had, in documenting those workflows. But for others, it was actually seeing it in a visual format. So for example, I asked my boss to make a map of our current member-facing ecosystem and to show us how each technology actually fit together. I also built scenarios for how, with a different system or ecosystem, not only could each individual be happier, but our whole company could work collectively towards that mission. Simultaneously, I was also wondering, what else is out there? I researched different technologies and I paid attention to how many star ratings they had. I asked on forums about tech that other comparable associations, it's comparable in size and scope to ours, what they would recommend. I even did some research on the technology itself because I was convinced that not all AMS companies were built the same. There were all-in-one technologies. There were standalones with integrations. There were some that were configurable. Some were customizable. And it was a huge research project. As the research is piling up, and the 50 tabs are open on my browser, I'm creating more resources. And the guiding light is, of course, your requirements document. This is where you list what you must have and what would be nice to have in your new ecosystem. My advice for drafting the requirements is really to focus on the desired outcome. not the process. For example, the requirement isn't that your SSO integration works. Instead, it's that it takes the user less than 3 seconds to log in. Do you see the distinction? That statement is specific, it's measurable, it's leading from where you want to be rather than where you are. And it also sneakily eliminates your assumptions, right? When you talk about SSO, you're assuming an integration. But what if your new ecosystem doesn't require that integration? So, now back to our resources. So we have our requirements, we have our workflows, there's the RFPs, the demos, and the references. But I also recommend creating a list of each platform that you use and why. Where are the integration points? How much does it cost? And how critical is it to your mission? Now, it's important to mention here, since we are speaking of mission, the discovery process should be driven by the goals of the organization, not just the pain points. So here's an example. One pain point was how cumbersome our job board was to maintain, but it wasn't part of our core mission. I think we had one job posted, sometimes two if we were having a particularly exciting month. Instead of spending resources promoting the job board, we asked whether we needed one at all. In this way, we were able to eliminate entire workflows that weren't strategically aligned, instead of only looking at workarounds. So, Emily, I'm going to sum up my answer to this question to say that every team groans when they hear that they're going to be doing another tech transition. But my advice is that this short-term pain is really important for the long-term gain, and that you really need to keep that big picture in mind. And I promise that it will be worth it.
Wow. I like your praise, about pain and long-term gain. That's wonderful. Emily?
Definitely. I just think that sounds like a very big project, but what I'm hearing then there is not only taking note of assessing the needs and the core needs, and I love breaking it out into plus the nice to haves, the wish list, but also taking a look at those processes and questioning, are they needed? Is the jobs board providing value to our members? Is there something else we could be investing our time in that our members would rather be invested in? So really, really good point there, Jessica.
Your next question, Emily.
Oh, sorry, I kind of thought that one was answered in Jessica's
Okay.
beautiful synopsis there, I guess. Yeah, Jessica, I think you might have answered it. So is it that piece of advice for leaders of associations? Where would you say is the exact starting point? And, bringing people on that journey. I think I heard there at the end, to get them involved, to bring them on the journey. Is there any other little piece of advice to getting started for the leaders?
For the leaders for getting started is really listening to your people. And I think that is the most important. That is the most important part, because if you're not listening to what they're saying, then you're not going to be able to actually hear that there is an issue. So I would say start there. Listen to what your people are saying.
Okay. Jessica, our third and final question, you might have answered it somehow earlier, but looking back now, what has the transformation meant to your organization? What have been the biggest benefits for the team? You already mentioned the members and the way the association operates. So maybe give us additional insights on this, please.
Thanks. So Bobby, from a broad view, the overhaul gave our team the ability to focus on work that created value. The biggest differences before and after the transitions were 4 major outcomes. So number 1, our total number of subscriptions went down from 17 to 14 platforms. So we were able to remove or consolidate some of our technology, like our CMS supporting tech and our transactional emails. Number 2 is we had an annual savings of $20,000 on just the base cost of services. So this doesn't even factor in savings on ad hoc fees we were paying for custom enhancements or reporting. Number 3, the move also freed up approximately 1 3/4 staff time, which I calculated by how we were able to reallocate staff after the transition. And then also I compared that to the list of workflows from before and after the implementation. And let me tell you a little bit about some of those wins. So we eliminated our email marketing list upload that I had been doing manually every week for 8.5 years. And honestly, I was almost emotionally attached to that one, but it's now an integration. Invoicing and refunding invoices are fully integrated into the AMS. Reminder emails are automated. Our third party is now responsible for web maintenance, and accessibility. And we are no longer meeting twice a week with our vendors about grievances or regression testing. So staff can focus on using their time to create member value. So, for example, my colleague who managed the virtual learning events no longer had to update things in 3 places and manually send confirmation emails. It doesn't mean that her work went away or anything like that. It just means that she was able to shift that menial task into curating quality content, which is more meaningful for member value. And that kind of brings me to my fourth major outcome, which is that I think is our last and most critical point, which is member experience improvement. Now, it now takes half a second for the user to log in. We've received so many compliments on our new site, and I wish I could catalog them all, but I want to end with this. The sweet spot for all of this is when the technology supports your mission, it empowers staff, and it creates more engaged members. I don't think people join associations because they love wrestling with software. They join because they care about the mission. And if a technology gives them a few extra hours per week to do that work, then everyone can leave at the end of the day feeling accomplished. And I think that's what we all want.
Fantastic insights. Thank you, Jessica. There was so much in there. So really well worth going back and having a listen. We really appreciate your openness on the podcast. We like to wrap up our call with 3 key takeaways for our listeners. So number 1 there, I really heard as a core message from you is that digital transformation starts with the people, not necessarily the technology. So the best software won't solve the problem if you don't first understand how your team is working. So spending time listening to people, mapping out your processes, asking why things are done a certain way before choosing a new system and reviewing the technology is really important. When people are involved from the beginning, I feel like they're far more likely to be embracing the change and coming on the journey with you, because we all know it can be easier to be set in our ways. So number 2 is don't automate broken processes. So really questioning. So before replacing the technology, take the opportunity to challenge the old ways of working as well. So like you did with the jobs board, how much benefit is that actually adding for us? So some processes don't need to be automated because they simply probably don't need to exist anymore. So simplifying the workflows can deliver some big benefits there as well. And number 3 I heard was measuring success by the time and value you create. So the big win isn't just saving money, it's giving the team back more time to focus on the members. So reducing the manual work, consolidating systems, removing repetitive tasks. So associations can improve A, staff satisfaction, but B, also to strengthen that member experience and to spend more time delivering their mission and what they're here to serve the community with. Thank you so much.
Yeah, excellent, Emily, for your summation as always. And thank you, Jessica, for gracing our podcast. Thank you too to our audience for joining us in the Association Matters podcast, where governance, leadership, and impact come together. We believe that when associations thrive, societies rise. This podcast is brought to you by the Philippine Council of Association and Association Executives, MEMBIS, AMS, and Pricing for Associations.
Subscribe to our podcast and visit the PCAAE website for updates and full episode notes. Until next time, thank you for joining us, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.